Hello dear friends, this is your personal English coach Divem here, and in this video we are going to understand a story known as The Blue Bead, written by Nora Brooke. So let's begin. From deep water came the crocodile. So there is a crocodile which is living in a water body which is very deep, and it is coming out. The writer begins by explaining how the crocodile is coming out of the deep water body, out of black water curved with whirlpools, and into the frill of gold shallows by the stepping stones. So, now the writer wants to let us know that the water is black in color, and when the crocodile is coming out, the water is in a whirlpool motion. What is a whirlpool? It is a swirling body of water. And from there, the crocodile goes into frill of gold shallows. The meaning of frill is strip of material used for decoration, and shallows is nothing but having a little depth. So the crocodile has come from a deeper water level to a place where water is not that deep. It is a little deep though, near the stepping stones. He was twice the length of a tall man, and inside him, among the stones which he had swallowed to aid digestion, rolled a silver bracelet. Now, the writer is trying to let us know how big the crocodile was. So, if we combine two tall people, that will be this crocodile's length, and the crocodile, as per the natural process, is chewing some stones to help him digest the food, and in the stones also there is a rolled silver bracelet which indicates that the crocodile eats humans. Timber was being floated down this great Indian river from the forests further up, and there were sleepers lying stuck around the stones until someone came to dislodge them and send them on their way, or until floods lifted them and jostled them along. Now, there are people who trade timber, and by now we also know that the plot and the story has occurred in India. So, timber was being floated by some people for trading from the forests. So, there were some people who cut timber and sent it across the river and floated across the river until a point where there were sleepers. Now, sleeper is a blockage where these woods will be accumulated, and they would lie there around the stones until some person came to dislodge them and send them on their way. So it's like either some person has to manually dislodge them. What is the meaning of dislodge? It is to remove from position. Or if there was a high tide, or if there was a lot of water, it would automatically move forward. The meaning of jostled is to bump into or brush against while in motion. The crocodile had no need to hide himself. He came to rest in the glassy shallows among logs and balanced there on tiptoe on the rippled sand, with only his raised eyes out of water and raised nostrils breathing the clean, sunny air. Now, why did the crocodile need the field to hide himself? Because he was dangerous and everyone else was scared of him. He had come to rest in the glassy shallows. So he had come to rest from deeper water to a place where water was not that much deeper. He had come to rest on one of the logs. So he sat there on one of the logs, balanced there on tiptoe. What is the meaning of tiptoe? As the word indicates, it's the tip of the toe of the crocodile. So he was on one of the logs and he was balancing himself by placing the tip of the toe on the ground on the rippled sand where the log was situated, and only his eyes were out of water, and his nostrils were out to breathe clean air. Around him, broad, sparkling water traveled between cliffs and grass and forested hills. A jungle track came out of scrub each side and down to sun whitened stepping stones on which little flycatcher was floating and trilling along. So, the place where the crocodile was resting, there was water on which the sunlight fell, and so it was sparkling. In between the cliff, what is a cliff? It is a vertical landmass, and the grass and forested hills. So the crocodile was resting in between natural landscapes. And the place where he was resting, there was a jungle track came out of a scrub. The meaning of scrub is vegetation of inferior quality. So there was scrub on each side and down to the sun whitened stepping stones on which little flycatcher is a bird. That bird was flirting and trilling along. The meaning of trilling is production of a trill sound. It's a typical sound made by a bird. The mugger crocodile. Meaning of mugger is a large crocodile. Blackish brown above and yellowy white under, lay motionless, able to wait forever till food came. So, by now we know that the crocodile was huge and it was resting on a log of wood on its tiptoe. And we also know the surroundings of the place where the crocodile was resting. We know the color of the crocodile, it was blackish brown and yellowy white, and it was waiting for food. The antediluvian saurian, the prehistoric juggernaut, ferocious and formidable, a vast force in the water, propelled by unimaginable and irresistible power of huge tail, lay lapped by ripples, a throb in his throat, which means the crocodile was lying there on the log of wood, and the usage of words antediluvian. The meaning of antediluvian is of the time before Noah's flood, or it also means reptile or lizard. So, all these words are used for the crocodile to show how powerful it was. Prehistoric means a very old creature. Juggernaut is an object that will crush everything, object or an animal that will crush everything. So, this particular crocodile was very powerful. It could kill any living being. Ferocious means marked by extreme and violent energy, and formidable means causing fear. A vast force in water. Propelled, the meaning of propel is to move in a certain direction by unimaginable and irresistible power of huge tail. So, when crocodile moves, you must have seen in TV channels, it uses its tail. So that's why it's mentioned propelled by unimaginable and irresistible power of its huge tail. The tail of the crocodile is the most powerful organ. If it just smashes something with its tail, it can crash, it can shatter. That powerful is a crocodile's tail. Lay lapped by ripples, a throb in his throat. Throb is nothing but to beat rapidly. And this sentence shows how powerful the crocodile was. It was huge, of the size of two tall humans, and with a strong tail. His mouth, running almost the whole length of his head, was closed and fixed in that evil bony smile, and where the yellow underside came up to it, it was tinged with green. Now, here we are getting to know the details of the huge crocodiles. So, there it was his mouth, which was huge and as good as his head's length. It was closed, and it had a huge smile, where the yellow underside, which means the backside of the crocodile, came up to it. So his smile, or you can say his mouth, stretched right from his head to the backside of its body. And the underside is also described. It was tinged with green. What is the meaning of tinged? It is a small amount of something. So it was not exactly green, but a little bit green. From the day, perhaps 100 years ago, when the sun had hatched him in a sandbank, and he had broken his shell and got his head out and looked around, ready to snap at anything before he was even fully hatched. From that day, when he had at once made for the water, ready to fend for himself immediately, he had lived by his brainless craft and ferocity. So, in this paragraph, we are getting to know the age of the crocodile, perhaps 100 years ago. So, the crocodile was 100 years old when the sun had hatched him. The meaning of hatch is to emerge from an egg. So, we know that when eggs are kept in the sun because of warmth, they hatch, and the eggs of the crocodile are usually located at the sandbanks at the shores of a water body. So, 100 years ago, this crocodile was born. How was he born? He broke the eggshell, and first he got his head out and he looked around, and he was so powerful that he was ready to grab anything. So, he was powerful right from birth. And the statement here, ready to fend for himself, the meaning of fend is to take care of oneself. So it means as soon as the crocodile was born, it was taking care of itself nicely. He had a lot of strength, but not much energy. So that's why it's mentioned brainless craft and ferocity. The meaning of craft is strength, and ferocity is nothing but extreme energy. Escaping the birds of prey and the great carnivorous fishes that eat baby crocodile, he has prospered, catching all the food he needed and storing it till buttered in holes in the bank. So he grew up nicely by escaping all the birds that used to eat up crocodile babies, and he got all the food he needed, and he used to store it in buttered in holes in the bank. The meaning of buttered is rotting or rotten, which means he used to store foods in the holes at the river bank until it was rotten. Tepid water to live in and plenty of rotten food grew him to his great strength. The meaning of tepid is neither warm nor cool. So it's like lukewarm water was available for him to live in, and plenty of food that he used to store and that had got rotten helped him grow and become of his size. Now nothing could pierce an inch thick armored hide. This shows how thick skinned he was. It was so thick that nothing could pierce into it, not even rifle bullets, which would bounce off. So, even if you shot the crocodile, the rifle bullets would bounce off of his body. Only the eyes and soft underarms offered a place. He lived well in the river, sunning himself sometimes with other crocodiles, muggers, as well as long snouted fish eating gharials on warm rocks and sandbanks where the sun dried the clay on them quite white, and where they could plop off into the water in a moment if alarmed. So, this sentence shows how well the crocodile lived. He lived very well in the river, and he used to sit in the sun for a long time with other crocodiles, which are known as muggers. Muggers is nothing but large crocodiles. He used to also sit along with large snouted. The meaning of snouted is long projecting nose or mouth. So there are also crocodiles with projecting noses and mouths. Fish eating gharials. Gharials is nothing but fish eating crocodiles. So they used to sit on warm rocks and sandbanks, and the sun used to help them dry, and then they could plop off. Meaning of plop is actually a sound of liquid hitting a hard surface. So if in case there was danger, they would all jump into water in case of emergency. The big crocodile fed mostly on fish, but also on deer and monkeys. Come to drink, perhaps a duck or two. But sometimes here at the fort he fed on pyda full of parasite or skeleton cow. And sometimes he went down to the burning ghats and found the half burned bodies of Indians cast into the stream. So now we are getting to know what exactly did that big crocodile eat. He ate fishes, deers, monkeys who came to drink water. The crocodile sometimes used to eat ducks, or maybe 2 or 3 ducks at a time. In the next sentence, it's mentioned ford. The meaning of ford is a stream or a water current. But sometimes here at the fort, he fed on pie dog full of parasite or a skeleton cow. So if there was a dead dog or a cow, then he would also eat them just in case. Sometimes he would go down to the burning ghats and found the half-burnt bodies of Indians, which shows some sort of the rituals that the Indians used to do during those times. And human bodies which were half burned were found, on which this particular crocodile used to feed. So this paragraph shows what all the crocodile ate. Beside him in the shoal, as he lay waiting, glimmered a blue gem. So besides him in the shoals, what is the meaning of shoals is nothing but shallow water. So where he was lying, there was a blue colored gem, a glimmered blue gem. What is the meaning of glimmered? It had a faint light and it was blue in color. It was not a gem though, it was a sand-worn glass that had been rolling around in the river for a long time. By chance, it was perforated right through the neck of bottle, perhaps a blue bead. The meaning of perforated is pierced with holes. So, in this paragraph, there is a mention of a blue colored ball and its appearance. So, it was sand-worn glass and it was there in the river for a long time. Nobody had touched it, but it was there somewhere around where the crocodile was resting. And it was perforated, which means it had holes. Now, just for your knowledge, it is very difficult to pierce a bead. You need a hot needle or some other apparatus, but this particular bead was already perforated. In the shrill, noisy village above the fort or above the stream, out of a mud house, same color as the ground, came a little girl, a thin, starveling child dressed in an earth-colored rag. She had torn the rag in two to make skirt and sari. The meaning of shrill is high-pitched or piercing. So, the village above the fort, above the stream, above the water body which we were referring till now. So by now we know that the village in this paragraph was noisy. Some sort of shrill noise was coming out of the village, and there was a mud house, which means people who used to live in that house were not very rich. Therefore, the writer has mentioned mud house. The same color as the ground came a little girl, thin, starveling. Meaning of starveling is one who is thin from lack of food, dressed in earth colored rag. The meaning of earth colored rag is maybe because of her habits or profession, her clothes were dirty. That's why it had become earth colored. She had torn the rag into two to make skirt and sari. So we already know that the girl and the people who lived in that house were poor. And here we are getting to know a character of the story, a very important character of the story. It's a girl who is poor and who is living in a mud house and who had one piece of rag, of which she made two pieces. One was made into a skirt, one into a sari which she was wearing. Sibia was eating the last of her meal, chapati wrapped around a smear of green chili and rancid butter. So, rancid is a strong in taste or smell. The girl's name, now we know, is Sibia. She was eating last meal, and you already know the meaning of chapati. And in chapati, she had put green chili and butter, which was smelling nice, a strong smell. And she divided this also to make it seem more, and bit it, showing straight white teeth. So, just for the sense of satisfaction, she ate chapati, green chili, and rancid butter, and she ate in such a way that it would look as if the food was more. With her ebony hair and great eyes, and her skin of oil brown cream, she was happy, immature child, woman about 12 years old. So Sibia, a poor girl, was 12 years old. She had good features of hair and eyes. The meaning of ebony is hard or dense. So her hair was great, her eyes were great, her skin was brown and oiled, and she was not really mature. She was not really understanding at this point, as she was just 12 years old. Barefoot, of course, and often goosey cold on a winter morning, and born to toil. She had nothing to wear beneath her foot, and the meaning of goosey is nothing but silly. Often goosey cold on a winter morning. So, on a winter morning, she would act silly at times, and she was born to toil. The meaning of toil is to work hard like a labor. So, her parents had instructed her to work like a laborer, or maybe her ancestors were in the business of toiling hard or working hard. So, she worked very hard, she had nothing to wear beneath her foot, and she was a little silly and immature. In all her life, she had never owned anything but a rag. She had never owned even one anna, not a piece, not a pie, even to buy, say, a handful of blown glass beads from that stall in that bazaar, where they were piled like stars, or one of thin glass bangles that the man kept on a stick, and you could choose which color you'd have. So, this particular girl, Sibia, had nothing in her life that she could call her own except one rag. And she didn't know anything about money, she didn't own any, she didn't have anna or a pi, which is the unit of currency during that time. Because the story is old, the units of currency, anna and pi, are being used. If she wanted, say, a bowl of glass beads from a stall in the bazaar which was located somewhere near her house, she couldn't afford it. Or even if she wanted bangles which lie in the store in the same bazaar. So there was a man who had a stick on which there were a lot of bangles. So even if she wanted those, she could not. she could have nothing because she was poor. She knew what finery was, though. Finery is beauty, so she was aware what beauty was. She had been with her parents and brothers all through the jungle to the little town at the railhead where there was this bazaar. So, who did she stay with? She stayed with parents and brothers in the jungle at the railhead. What is the railhead? Railhead is a point on the railway where goods are loaded or unloaded. And there was this little bazaar beside it. And she walked through all the milling people. Milling people is nothing but people who work in mills, who are in the process of grinding things using apparatuses. And as she walked through all the milling people and the dogs and monkeys full of fleas, the idling, gossiping, bargaining humanity spitting beetle juice, heard the bell of Sacred Bull clonking as he lumped along through the dust and hubbub. So, this particular sentence indicates how her life was. She was walking through people who were working in mills. She was walking through or walking in between dogs and monkeys who were not really clean, who were infected with fleas, which is nothing but an insect. From where she was walking, there were also people bargaining, gossiping, and talking, spitting beetle, which is known as pan in Hindi. And there were also bulls clonking. Meaning of clonking is abrupt sound of two hard objects. So the bells were clonking. Sacred Bull clonking as he lumped along through the dust and hubbub. So this is the scenario or the surroundings of where this little girl lived. The meaning of hubbub is commotion. She had paused amazed before the sweet meat stall to gaze at the brilliant honey confections abuzz with dust and flies. Because we know that she is poor, she used to walk around her area and she used to stare at things. Right now she was staring at sweet meat stall and honey confection. Confection is a food item prepared really sweet. So she would just stand there and stare at these wonderful sweet items abuzz with dust and flies, which means abuzz is excessive gossip or excessive noise of dust and flies. They smelled wonderful above the smells of trains and humanity and cheap cigarettes. So, we know that she was walking in between a lot of things, but she saw a sweetmeat stall. She started gazing. Meaning of gazing is staring. Staring at the sweet items that were there in the shop. And unfortunately, because it was a village and people were poor, it was not nicely placed, so it was surrounded with dust and flies. But the smell was wonderful, even when there were drains, so it's like sewage or waste or cheap cigarettes thrown around that shop. The sweets still smelled wonderful. At home, she sometimes tasted wild honey or crunched the syrup out of stalk of sugarcane, but these sweets were green and magenta. So why she was staring at these sweets? Although she had tasted sweet taste at home by having wild honey or maybe a sugarcane juice, but the sweet that she was staring at this moment were of different color, so that grabbed her attention. Then there was the cloth stall stacked with great rolls of new cotton cloth, stamped at the edge with markers sign of tiger's head and smelling so wonderful of its dressing straight from the mills that Sibia could have stood by it all day. So the road on which she was walking, there were many shops. One of them was a sweets shop that we already saw, and another one was a cloth stall. And there were various designs like cotton cloth, stamped on the edge of a tiger's head, and those cloths were smelling nice and good. She was fascinated by all these things, and she could stare at all these things for the whole day. She could not own anything because she was poor. But there were other wonders to see: satin sewn with real silver thread, tiny trays of Birmingham, and a sari which had got chips of looking glass embroidered into the border. So, she was observing everything on the way. Satin is a cloth woven from silk, nylon, or polyester. Sewn comes from the word sewing. So, a cloth made of satin, and there were some silver threads around it. There were also tin trays and sari, which had got good embroidery. She joined the crowd around a Kashmiri traveling merchant on his way to the bungalows. So while she was walking, there was a crowd as well. And she joined that crowd. And that crowd was of a merchant who was Kashmiri. And he was walking on his way to the bungalows. He was showing dawn colored silks that poured like cream. And he'd got a little locked chest with turquoise and opals in it. So this merchant had something to show to the people, like dawn colored silks that looked like a cream, and a box or a chest with diamonds and precious stones on it, which is indicated by the word turquoises and opals. Best of all, a box which, when you pressed it, a bell tinkled and yellow woolen chicken jumped out. So it's nothing but a toy, a wooden toy in which there was a button and a soft toy inside. So when you press it, that soft toy pops out. And in her case, it was a woolen chicken. There was no end to the wonders of the world for her. Her world was small, simple, and easy. But Sibia, in all her life, from birth to death, was marked for work. Since she could toddle, she had husked corn, gathered sticks, and put dung to dry, and cooked and weeded, and carried and fetched water, and cut grass for fodder. So, it just means that as soon as Sibia was born, and as soon as she could toddle, the meaning of toddle is to walk unsteadily. So, as soon as she was capable of walking, she got into work. Her parents asked her to work hard as soon as she was capable of looking after herself. She did a lot of stuff like husking the corn, gathering the sticks, putting the dung to dry, cooked and weeded. So, weeding is removal of unwanted plants, and carrying the water, fetching the water, cutting the grass for the fodder, etc. She was going with her mother and some other women now to get paper grass from the cliffs above the river. So by now we know that Sibia was a hard-working 12-year-old young girl, and as of now she was with her mother and some other women to get some paper grass from the cliff, which is nothing but vertical landmass. It was located above a river. When you had enough of it, you could take it down by bullock cart to the railhead and sell it to the agent who would arrange for its dispatch to the paper mills. So, what did Sibia and the women do of the things that they had collected? They would go to the railhead. What is the meaning of railhead? It is a point on railway where goods are loaded and unloaded. There was an agent sitting there, and he would purchase whatever the women had, and he would dispatch it. What is the meaning of dispatch? It means to send quickly. He would send quickly to the paper mills so that products can be made. So the women used to get the material from the land. They would then sit on bullock carts and go to the railhead, and at the railhead they would give it to the agent who would then send it to paper mills for manufacture of products. The women often toiled all day at this work. So the women worked very hard to get this done. and the agent sat on silk cushion smoking hookah. So agent did nothing. He used to collect material from women and send it to the paper mills. Sat on silk cushion smoking a hookah means that the agent was having a good time. He was doing nothing. He was getting money out of a little work. Hookah is nothing but a pipe with a long and flexible tube used for smoking tobacco. Such thoughts did not trouble Sibia. However, as she skipped along with her sickle and homemade hay fork beside her mother. As we know, Sibia was a little silly and immature, and she was jumping around her mother with sickle. What is the meaning of sickle? It is an implement having semicircular blade, which she would use it on the farms. And there was also a hay fork, which is nothing but tool used for moving grass. So she had these tools and she was skipping around with her mother. You could skip on the way out, but not on the way back when you ached with tiredness, and there was a great load to carry. Which means, while they were going towards the land to get some paper grass, you could skip or you could jump around, but you cannot do the same thing or you cannot play around when you're coming back because there was a huge load to carry. It's impossible to jump. Some of the women were wearing necklaces made out of lal beads, the shiny scarlet seeds, black one, and that grew everywhere in the jungle. So, there was a group of women, as we already know, in which Sibia was there, and those women were wearing necklaces of different things that were locally available in the jungle. And it was a tradition to have new necklaces each year instead of last year's faded one. And Sibia was making one too. Sibia observed that the women with whom she was traveling along, they're having necklaces. And Sibia also had an aspiration to have a nice necklace. How nice it was going to be to hear that rattling swish round her neck. Meaning of rattling is loose object shaking or vibrating. She wished of the same kind of necklace that the other women had. As she frushed along with lots of necklaces. But each seed, hard as stone, had to be drilled with a red hot needle, and the family needle was snapped, so she must wait till they could buy another. So Sibia was dreaming of a nice necklace, just like the one that other women were wearing. And she thought how nice it would be if I had a lot of necklaces around my neck, which would make some sweet noise, and I would boast about it, and I would move around with a lot of necklaces on my neck. But there was a problem. In her family, the needle which was used to pierce into the beads for using necklace was broken. So Sibia will have to wait until her family gets a new needle. Oh, for the strings and strings of glass and beads, anklets, earrings, nose rings, bangles, all the gorgeous dazzle of the bazaar, all her little golden body decorated. The meaning of dazzle is very bright, which makes difficult to see. And this sentence means that when we are talking about glass beads and strings, all of her body was decorated with them. Chattering as they went, the women followed the dusty track towards the river. On their way, they passed a Gujar encampment of grass huts, where these nomadic graziers would live for a time until their animals had perhaps finished all the easy grazing within reach, or they were not able to sell enough of their white butter and white milk in the district, or there was no one to buy the young male buffaloes for tiger bait. So, the crowd of women, in which Sibia was one of them, They were following a dusty track towards the river. Now, on the way, they passed a Gujar encampment. What is Gujar? Gujar is a tribe, or you can say a group of people of Kashmir. Now, it's actually a tribe which has now divided into various groups, or we can also say clan. What is encampment? Encampment is nothing but place where tent is pitched. So while these women were walking across a path, on their way they passed this particular tribe. Nomadic graziers. Nomadic is habitually wandering person or an animal. Graziers is one who grazes cattle. Now, they were here for a reason. Either their animals had finished grazing, or they were not able to sell enough of their white butter and milk in the district, or there was no one to buy the young male buffaloes for tiger bait. Bait is nothing but food used in catching fish. So it was because of these three reasons that Gujar tribe was sitting there in their tents, and Sibia and her group of women passed these tribes along the way. Next sentence says, or perhaps the cattle killing tiger was making nuisance of himself. Then they'd move on. So if the cattle killing tiger was there somewhere around the Gujar tribe, they would all move on. Sibia glanced at the Gujar woman as she went past. They wore trousers, tight and wrinkled at the ankles, and in their ears large silver rings made out of melted rupees, and one of them was clinking a stick against big brass gurhas, in which they fetched water from the river for the camp to see which ones were empty. We know Sibia was 12 years old and very observant. And when Gujar woman passed Sibia, she was looking at them. And she saw that they were wearing trousers and wrinkled and tight trousers at the anklets, and there were silver rings on their ears which were made of melted rupees. If you melt a rupee, you can shape it into anything. So they had shaped it into a ring, and one of them was clinking. What is the meaning of clinking? It's the sound of a metal. One of them clinking a stick against a brass gurhas. What is the meaning of gurhas? Type of Indian cloth. Now, big brass gurhas is nothing but a vessel in which they fetched water from the river for the camp to see which ones were empty. So these Gujar women were carrying vessels in which they would fetch water. Sibia was observing all of this. The men and boys were out of camp just now with the herd or gone to the bazaar to sell produce, but one or two buffaloes were standing about, creatures of great wet nose and moving jaws and gaunt black bones. What is the meaning of gaunt? It's nothing but lean, angular, and bony. So there were only Gujar women left in the tent. Why? Because the men and the boys, or the male members, were out of the tent and they had gone to the bazaar or to the market to sell their stuff. Only one or two buffaloes were standing beside the tent, and the description of these creatures have been given. They have wet noses and moving jaws and a little bony. The Gujars were junglis, as Sibia was too, born and bred in the forest. So this particular clan of Gujars were nomadic. They were born and brought up in jungle itself, just like Sibia was. For countless centuries, their forebears had lived like this, getting their living from animals, from grass and trees, as they scratched their food together and stored their substance in large herds and silver jewelry. So these Gujar tribes had their forefathers doing the same thing that they were doing right now. They used to live in the forest along with animals, along with nature, and whatever food they got. They used to store it in large herds and silver jewelry and other apparatuses. They were man in wandering pastoral age, not Stone Age hunters and not yet cultivators. So, which indicates this was what human beings did during the pastoral age. Ah, now there was a river, twinkling between trees, sunlit beyond dark trunks. They could hear it rushing along. So, along the way, now there was a roadblock, there was a river, twinkling. Why does it say twinkling? Because the sunlight would fall on them and it would twinkle in between the branches of trees and leaves. They could hear it rushing along. The women came out on the shore and made for the stepping stones. Who are the women here? Is it Gujars or is it Sibia and her group? It is Gujars. So the Gujars wanted some water and they came out on the shore and they made for stepping stones means they stepped on the stones which were in between the river so that they could stand on it and collect some water. They had plenty to laugh and bicker about. What is the meaning of bicker? It is to quarrel in a tiresome manner or to gossip in a tiresome manner. So they were constantly speaking while they were fetching water. As they approached the river in noisy crowd, they girded up their skirt so as to jump from one stone to stone, and they clanged their sickles and forks together over their shoulders to have ease of movement. What is the meaning of girded? It's to bind with flexible rope. Clanged is nothing but large hard sound of metal. So, just so that they can get water easily, they made themselves a little comfortable. They tied their skirts together so that they could jump easily, and they got their apparatuses in a bunch on their shoulders so that they could easily move from stone to stone to get water. They shouted their quarrels above the gush of the river. So, the gush of the river, as we already know, is loud, but still they were shouting so much that the gush of the river was not heard. And as you know, they were bickering or quarreling. Noise frightens crocodiles. The big mugger did not move, and all the women crossed in safety to the other bank. Now, why it's mentioned that noise frightens crocodiles? Because the women or the Gujars are moving towards the river to get some water where there are crocodiles, and crocodiles do not like noise. The big crocodiles didn't move even when they made noise, and the women were lucky enough to cross safely to the other side. Here they had to climb a still hillside to get at the grass, but all fell to with a will and sliced away at it wherever there was a foothold to be had. So somehow they managed to cross to the other side, and they used to balance themselves on footholds, which means solid grip with feet. Down below them ran the broad river, pouring powerfully out from its deep narrow pools among the cold cliffs and shadows, spreading into warm shallows lit by kingfishers. Grey turtles lived here, and mahseer weighing more than 100 pounds. Mahseer is an endangered fish. So, this particular paragraph shows that the river from which they were trying to get water was crowded with aquatic animals. And unfortunately, there were crocodiles too. Sometimes you could see them lying out on those slabs of clay over there, but there were none to be seen at the moment. So the area from which these women were trying to fetch water had a lot of aquatic animals, and there were crocodiles as well. Usually they would be seen somewhere near the clay shores, but right now while they were trying to take water, they couldn't see any crocodile. Where Sibia was working, wind coming across hundreds of miles of trees cooled her sweating body, and she could look down over the river as if she was a bird. Although she did not dare stop for a moment under her mother's eye, her imagination took her in swooping flight over the bright water and golden air to the banks where she had played as a child. So Sibia was observing everything. She was observing the movement of Gujar women trying to take water from the river filled with aquatic animals. This paragraph shows that her observation was very powerful, and with her imagination, she would take a drive across the river like a bird, and she could not get away from her mother's eyes, which means she could not escape her mother's control. But even when she could not go anywhere, she would imagine things and be satisfied. In those cavelets, above the high water mark of the highest flood, she had stored some little bowls, molded of clay, while they hardened. If there were anything that could be used for coloring, they would look fine, painted with marigolds and elephants. So, what is the meaning of cavelets? It is a small cave, big enough for humans to enter. She had stored some little balls molded of clay. So she had made some clay balls and she was waiting for them to get hard. And she thought that she could use them for coloring. They would look great if she painted marigolds and elephants on them. Child, the sharp word, the glare of her mother's angry, sweating face pulled Sibia back to work and they toiled on. So, Sibia would occasionally see the cavelets if the clay moldings that she had made were dried up or not. If they did, she would use it. But while she was in that area, her mother called her, and Sibia came back to where the women were working. But at last it was time to go back to see to their animals and the evening meals. The loaded women set out to cross the river again. Sibia hung back. She would just dawdle a bit and run and see if the little clay cups were still there in the cave waiting to be painted and used. So finally, the women were done with their work and they were going back to see the animals which they had and also for the evening meal. They had some load to carry. They were carrying the load while they were going across the river, and Sibia didn't go along with them. She would just dawdle. The meaning of dawdle is to waste time or just to stay there leisurely for a while. And she again went to the cavelet to check if the little clay cups that she had made were still there, waiting to be painted and used. Although the women were now tired and loaded, they still talked. Those in front yelled to those behind. They crossed the river safely and disappeared up the track into the trees on the other side. Even their voices died away. So, women keep talking, and even when after a hard day's work they were tired, they still kept running their mouths. Women in the front would say something to women at the back, and somehow they crossed the river and disappeared on the other side. Silence fell. Sibia came down alone to the stepping stones. So you need to imagine the situation here. Gujars or the Kashmiri tribes are there at the river banks to get some water. In the meantime, Sibia and other women also are returning back so their paths might cross. Here the situation is Sibia and the women with whom she was there. The women already went away. Sibia is the one left. She is coming along the stepping stones. The light of evening was striking up the gorge, pink into the ultraviolet shadows. The meaning of gorge is deep, narrow passage. So, the light of the evening was enlightening the narrow passage, and there were some shadows. Now that the sun was off it, the water poured almost invisible among the stone. with no reflection to show where it began. Sibia stepped onto the first stone. She was heavily weighted, her muscles stretched and aching. The hay fork squeaked in the bagged dry grass and dug into her collarbone, so close under the skin, in spite of sari bunched up to make a pad. When she was halfway over, she put her load down on a big boulder to rest and lean breathing on the fork. So there are a couple of meanings here. Squeaked is nothing but short, high-pitched sound. Collarbone is a bone between shoulder and the breastbone. And boulder is a large mass of stone detached from the surroundings. So Sibia had a lot of weight to carry, so much that her muscles were aching and her apparatus made some noise. And in spite of the sari bunched up to make a pad, she was all okay. She was not stressed. When she was halfway over, she put her load down on a big boulder to rest and lean, breathing on the fork, which means she tried to take a pause and relax. Now she was taking a break, and at the same time, a Gujar woman came down with two goras to the water on the other side in order to get good, clear water, which would quickly fill both goras to the top without sand, and walked onto the stepping stone. So here Sibia is sitting there taking a break because of the load she was carrying, and at the same time these women are here, Gujar women, trying to get some water in such a way that there will be no sand in it. She was within a yard of crocodile where he lunged at her. Meaning of lunge is sudden forward movement. Up out of darkling water heaved the great reptile, water slushing off him, his livid jaws yawning and all his teeth flashing as he slashed at her leg. So the crocodile got hold of Gujar women who were trying to get water. There was one particular woman who was near to the crocodile, and the crocodile pounced on her. Some difficult words to learn here. Darkling is nothing but dark. Heaved is to lift with difficulty. Slushing is to move through. So you can imagine when crocodile pounces upon someone, there is a lot of water movement, and the crocodile had caught her leg. The woman was screaming and she dropped both brass pots with a clatter on the boulder, from whence they bounced to water. Sibia saw them bob away in the current. Oh, the good vessels are gone. The two good vessels are gone. So, here the crocodile has pounced upon a Gujar woman who was trying to get some water. The crocodile has already bit her leg, and the instruments or apparatus which she was carrying to get water, they fell from her hand and they broke off and they moved along with the stream. That's why it's written the two vessels are gone. The meaning of bob away. Bob is nothing but to move gently and vertically. The Gujar woman recoiled from the crocodile, but his jaws closed on her leg at the same moment as she slipped and fell on bone-breaking stone and clutched one of the timber logs to save herself. Meaning of recoiled is a shrinking or falling back. So the woman tries to set herself free from the crocodile, but she slipped onto a stone, and then finally she got a wooden log on which she clutched to save herself. And this particular log was also flowing in the stream, but it jammed between two boulders or two heavy stones, with the woman clinging to it and screaming, while crocodile pulled on her leg, threshing his mighty tail, bang, bang, to and fro, in great smacking flails as he tried to drag her free and carry her off down into deeps of the pool. Difficult words and their meanings. Clutched is to seize with claws. Threshing is to separate the grain from the straw, but in this case, threshing his mighty tail is moving in such a way that it looks as if it would separate anything that came in its way. Flails is weapon with striking part attached. Great smacking flails. So, you can imagine the situation here. The crocodile has got hold of Gujar woman's leg, and Gujar woman tried to escape, but she could not, and she slipped. She slipped so hard that she hit a stone, and now she is flowing in the stream, and finally she is getting hold of a wooden timber log. And fortunately, that timber log gets stuck in between two stones, and at the same time, the crocodile is trying to pull her leg and move its tail. Blood spread everywhere. Sibia sprang. Sibia jumped. She was watching all this, and Sibia jumped. From boulder to boulder, she came leaping like a rock goat. So, from stones to stones, she jumped as she saw someone in pain. Sometime it had seemed difficult to cross these stones, especially the big gaps in the middle where the river coursed through like bulb of glass. So, even when it was difficult to cross the river, Sibia tried her might and she jumped from one stone to another. Sometimes it had also become difficult to cross the river in between two stones, and the meaning of coursed, coursed, is sequence of event. River coursed through like bulge of glass, which means the sequence of river or the path of the river was like a bulge of a glass, making it difficult to cross. But now she came on wings, choosing her foot in mid-air without even thinking about it, and in one moment she was beside the shrieking woman. So, as soon as Sibia, who was resting because of the load that she was carrying, saw this particular woman in pain, she didn't think of anything, she didn't think of her own life, but she jumped to save her as soon as possible. Even when it was difficult to cross the river to reach the shrieking woman, she did it. She collected her might and reached that woman anyhow. In boiling bloody water, the face of the crocodile, fastened round her legs, was tugging to and fro and smiling. So the crocodile was trying hard to kill that woman. His eyes rolled onto Sibia. One slap of tail could kill her. So now the crocodile saw that another girl was approaching him. If the crocodile wished, he could just smack his tail onto Sibia and that could kill her. He struck. Up shot the water 20 feet and fell like a silver chain. So the crocodile tried to hit Sibia with his tail, and water, it splashed in the air, so the bubbles made it like a silver chain, made it look like a silver chain. Again, the rock jumped under the blow. But in the daily heroism of the jungle, as common as a thorn tree, Sibia did not hesitate. So the crocodile tried to hit Sibia, but Sibia didn't hesitate to help that woman. She aimed at the reptile's eyes. With all the force of her little body, she drove the hay fork at the eyes, and one prong went in, right in, while its spear scratched past on the horny cheek. So the crocodile was trying hard to kill Sibia, but Sibia had some plan in her mind. With her apparatus with which she used to cut the paper grass, which is known as hay fork, she used the hay fork to target his eyes, and she hit that crocodile very hard in its eyes, and it went right into his eyes, passed onto the horny cheeks of the crocodile. The crocodile reared up in convulsion. What is the meaning of convulsion? It is intense muscular contraction, till half his lizard body was out of the river. the tail and the nose nearly meeting over his stony back. Then he crashed back, exploding the water, and in uproar of bloody foam he disappeared. So Sibia hit him so hard that the crocodile reared up in convulsion, or he got intense pain, and half of the body was thrown out of the river, and then he ran away and he disappeared from the scene. He would die, not yet, but presently, though his death would not be known for days, not till his stomach, blown with gas, floated him, then perhaps he would be found upside down among the logs at timber boom with pus in his eyes. So, the way Sibia hit him, it was very sure that he would die. But people would not notice his death until they saw the crocodile's body floated with bacteria and parasites, and until it was there along with other timber logs that were collected for trading. Sibia got her arms round the fainting woman and somehow dragged her from water. She stopped her wounds with sand and bound them with rag and helped her home to Gujar encampment cave, where the woman made a litter to carry her to someone for treatment. So Sibia not only killed the crocodile, but she got her arms round the fainting. Fainting is nothing but getting dizzy and falling down. Fainting woman, and she dragged her out of water, and she made sure that the woman reached the same tent from where she came. She made sure that the woman was there with her people, the Gujar people. And fortunately, there were some men who made litter. Now, litter is a platform mounted on two shafts so that they could carry that fainting woman for treatment. Then Sibia went back for her grass and sickle and fork. So Sibia did her job and she went back to work. The fork was lying in river, not carried away luckily, and she bent to pick it up out of water. She saw a blue bead, not blue now, with sun nearly gone, but no color, white blue and its shape, wobbling in moment of stream. She reached her arm down into a yard of cold silk water to get it, missing it first of all because of refraction. So, we know that Sibia is immature. She's just 12-year old. But she still did her job, and she, after making sure that the woman was there with her people, comes back to get her things. But what happens? The apparatus with which she killed the crocodile was about to flow away with the stream. Fortunately, it was still there. But along with the apparatus, she saw a blue colored bead. Now, the blue bead appeared blue because of the sun, but the sun was not there anymore. And it was just lying there in the stream. She stretched her arm into a yard of cold silk water to get it, and she didn't get it at first because of refraction. What is refraction? It changed direction. So if something's floating on water and you try to get it, it might not get in your hands because of the ripples, because of the object changing its direction. Then there it lay in her wet palm, perfect, even pierced, ready for use, with the sunset shuffled about inside like gold dust. So finally she got hold of that blue bead. All her heart went up in flames of joy because she always wanted such a bead. After a bit, she twisted it into the top of her skirt against her tummy so she would know if it burst through the poor cloth and fell. So Sibia made sure that the bead was tight in her cloth, binded. So in case if it fell down, she would know. Then she picked up her fork and sickle and heavy grass and set off home. Eh, what a day! Her bare feet smudged out the wriggle mark. The meaning of smudged is small flaw which spoils appearance. Her bare feet smudged out the wriggle mark of snakes in the dust. So, in the dust there were some marks left out by snakes, which were rubbed off by her feet, her bare feet. There was the thin singing of malaria mosquitoes among the trees now, and this track was much used at night by Moros or Mechna elephant, the tuskless one. But Sibia was not thinking of any of them. The stars came out, she did not notice. So, here we have this immature, silly girl who apparently helped someone and she got a blue bead, and then there is dawn, like brightness in the sky, so it is a little bit dark, the sun is setting, and there is danger of snakes, danger of malaria mosquitoes, danger of crazy elephants, the tuskless one. But Sibia, because all of her attention was in the bead, she didn't really think of any of these dangers. The stars came out, she did not notice. On the way back, she met her mother, out of breath, come to look for her and scolding. I did not see till I was home that you were not there. I thought something must have happened to you. And Sibia, bursting with a story, cried, something did. I found a blue bead for my necklace. Look. So, we know that the other women from Sibia's group had already gone back home, only she was left alone. But when she came back home, Sibia's mother was already angry because she thought Sibia was lost and something happened to her. So as soon as she reached her mother scolded her badly. But instead of explaining everything, Sibia's attention was in the blue bead, in the precious gift that she just found. And she narrated it to her mother that I found a blue bead for my necklace. Look. So friends, this is the chapter, the blue bead. If in case you understood, do like and mention your doubts in the comment section. If in case you want me to explain any other chapter, do mention that as well in the comment section and I would be happy to make a video for you. I hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.